Leah Richheimer. This is the Ladies Talk Show, and we are on class number 19. Get your books out. We are on page 58, chapter 3. And I'm going to read a couple of sections, and then we are going to take your questions. Get your questions ready. Okay, here we go. Practical implications. Okay, so let's say you're on your way to your daughter's science fair presentation at school, and your husband calls and says he left important documents at home and needs you to speed them over to his office immediately. You are conflicted about what you should do. On the one hand, this is an urgent situation, and we should always lean towards taking care of our husband first if we can. On the other hand, your daughter is really counting on you at her science fair. Obviously, the top choice would be to solve this logistically, perhaps by getting a friend to deliver the documents since your presence is not necessarily needed for your husband. But let's say they are very private documents that only you can deliver. Now you feel really stuck. You guys with me? This is a tough problem, right? Your husband needs you. You're on your way to the science fair. Okay. The first thought that many of us would have in this situation is anger or frustration that we have been placed into such an aggravating position in the first place. Why did our husband forget the documents? Why did it have to happen at such an important time for our daughter? Why are we suddenly in an impossible position? This is normal, perfectly understandable way to feel. However, perhaps we can rise above the emotional feeling, wishing things weren't the way they are, and ask a higher level question in order to bring out our best selves. And that question is, what does Hashem want from me right now? For whatever reason, God wanted me to be torn about this at this moment. So how can I best deal with the cards I have been dealt? Obviously, this is not a life and death situation, but by utilizing our decision-making skills in the more minor issues, we learn to make better decisions about much more consequential challenges. And in actuality, missing our daughter's presentation may create an unpleasant memory for her, which only adds to our stress. So what does Hashem want from us in this untenable situation? This is where our Bini is Sarah, that's our woman's intuition, comes into play. Every situation and circumstance is different, and we must take into consideration a myriad of factors. For instance, is this the first time our husband has made this type of request? Or is he the type to cry wolf all the time, making things appear urgent when they really truly can wait? Does our husband do this kind of thing all the time, causing endless disruptions to the proper care of our children? And does he fully understand the ramifications of missing your daughter's presentation at the science fair? Also, have you been to every one of your daughter's recitals and presentations over the years, and this will be the first time that you would be absent? Is your daughter one of the many short presentations with half the mothers in attendance, or is she the only presenter and you will be sorely missed? Do you understand what this is? You're sort of looking at the context that this conflict took place. We must consider all of the factors that play out in this decision and weigh them very carefully. But the point is, we need to create a very large shift in our priorities to put considerably more emphasis on taking care of our husband's needs first and foremost, whenever humanly possible. Our entire outlook must be to put him first, even at the expense of our daughter's science project, unless there's an extremely important reason not to. Use your own judgment and perhaps discuss the various factors with your husband before making a decision, but try your hardest to lean all of your priorities toward your husband, because as we see, that's what Hashem wants of us. And after all of our calculations, if we end up deciding to bring the documents to our husband in the merit of our focusing on Shalom Bayis, may a small miracle happen and the principal of our daughter's school inexplicably postpones the science fair to the next day, right? When you do something for Shalom Bayis, you can expect miracles. You may not see them all, but they are there. Okay, working smarter. I do realize that this way of thinking may be so antithetical to our current reality, where it seems impossible to imagine changing our plans just to help our husbands. With all the piles of things we have to do, now we're meant to drop everything so we can dedicate ourselves to this one simple rule of putting him first. The reality is that we don't necessarily need to give our husbands more time than we give to our children, our work, or our other projects. It just means making sure that our husband understands how important he is in word and deed. This is a matter of working smarter, not smarter, not harder. We must internalize the fact that nothing is more precious to Hashem than Shalom Bayis. I will walk you through many ways to accomplish this, but the message is clear. The more we put our husbands at the top of our priority list, the more wonderful our marriage will be. And further, the better children we will raise. There is no greater chinuch, education than parents who treat each other well. By making your husband your top priority, you'll send a powerful message to your children. It sounds like I'm going, you should do this, you should do that. The point you have to understand is this is all for your benefit. You are going to reap the rewards of this extraordinary closeness that you're going to have with your husband. Your children will witness firsthand the dedication you put forth to achieve peace in the home, and that you certainly have the correct priorities. This might be the most important lesson they could ever learn in their life. So what this means in practical terms is if your husband and child both ask you questions simultaneously, answer your husband first. If your child is having a tantrum and your husband calls, ignore the child as long as it's safe to do so. If you are dropping off your husband's shirts at the cleaner and having your daughter's shoes repaired, drop the shirts off first if you can, even if no one except you will ever know. Are you clear? Understanding that? This is like, what? No one will know. You will know. God will know. And putting your husband first is a muscle that you're building so that you can create much more closeness in your marriage. We are training ourselves to prioritize well for maximum benefit to our husbands and ourselves. This means that in the hundreds of choices we make every day, a wife must always try to put her husband first unless there is an extremely good reason not to. This includes even her own parents. As the Gemara states, honoring her husband even takes precedence over honoring her own parents. In almost every circumstance, look for a way to put your husband first. Even if you're an empty nester and you think this doesn't apply to you, there are plenty of instances when it does. Get off the phone with the kids in Israel when your husband walks into the house. And I have a big hush of Rebbitzin. I told this to her and she says, what? My husband doesn't, we've been married 40 whatever years. He doesn't care. I'm talking to the kids. He wants me to keep close with them. I said, well, give it a try. And about a month later, she called me and she said, it's really uncanny. She said, it was weird that you told me that when you told me that, because I had been talking more every time my husband came home, because I have one kid who just moved there and another kid who's moving away and another, whatever. And I was more on the phone this last month than ever. And I did what you said. And I feel closer to my husband. My husband feels closer to me. So this was somebody who for 43 years had been doing it one way and shifted. So we can all learn from Chazal. Go visit the kids when it's best for your husband's schedule, not convenient for the kids. And perhaps don't send so many gifts if it makes his life more difficult. A lot of people are sending so many gifts to their kids that their husband has to work harder. He has to, give up other things because the wife is feeling obligated to the kids instead of taking care of her husband. Only we have the power to decide that our husband will no longer be relegated to a duty we will get to after we take care of everything else. Only if our husbands know how important they are to us can they truly fulfill their potential and be all that we need them to be. This kind of prioritizing may seem very daunting to pull off day in and day out. Yet we see in the Gemara that if Hashem expects something of us, we must be capable of accomplishing it. And by the way, do not look to your husband to put you first. God did not call him an Ezer Kenegda, okay? You may see a profound shift in how he treats you, but even if you don't, it doesn't minimize our role in this world. So what will all this prioritizing get for us besides giving nachas to God? It will give us husbands who cherish us. Okay, get your questions ready, ladies. Go ahead, Sarit.
Okay. So Devorah says, are there any givens, in quotes, that a man should be in charge of, like planning the date nights, taking out the trash, doing the grocery shopping, etc.?
Those are all done by negotiation. And some, oftentimes I think in most households, they kind of follow certain rules. The man often does the garbage, and the woman often is doing a lot of the shopping or cooking for the food. But in many households, it's not that way. It's quite different. So those are by negotiation, as long as, there is something I've never quite understood, and it's above my pay grade, but the Egyptians in Mitzrayim used to give men women's work and women's men's work, and it was the ultimate torture, where they have them dig a hole and then fill the hole in, and they never had the satisfaction, even though they were working night and day, they never had the satisfaction of accomplishing it, or they were doing men's work and women were doing men, the opposite, and that was seen as something very, very devastating to their esteem, on both of their esteems. So I'm not quite sure where that fits today, because the roles have changed significantly. And this is a big question for a rabbi, but I would question if having, something that is so obviously a woman's in a woman's purview, having a man do it, and vice versa. So I don't know what those are, and I don't want to get into it because again, it's above my pay grade, and I also don't want to say things that are incorrect or that are working in a marriage. It could be the opposite. The husband's doing, and it works. So I don't want to I don't want to fix what ain't broke, but when you are asking your husband to do things, just have it stick a little bit in mind. Like, am I asking him to do something that's kind of a woman's role? I'm going to say one really dumb thing, picking out clothes for your daughter. Okay. That's probably a woman's would be more comfortable doing that. So is giving him that job make him feel a little bit less manly? Just keep that in mind when you're making requests. Very, very good point. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Yocheved, by the way, Miriam says best parenting advice ever, LOL. So she loves that. And Yocheved said, is it ever healthy to argue in front of your children? I grew up never seeing my parents argue. And when I got married, I thought my husband and I were doomed for failure when we had our first few arguments. That's a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question. I don't really think that there's a hard and fast rule on it. You could ask your rabbi if there's a hard and fast rule on it. I think it depends on how it's handled. Like if you're saying, let's have spaghetti. No, I really wanted waffles. No, spaghetti. We're fighting in front of the kids. Let's go repair to the other room. So I think having conflicts and letting them see how you resolve conflicts. If you say, all right, look, we'll have waffles tonight as long as you promise we're going to have, spaghetti tomorrow night or whatever it is. That's probably healthy. Having conflicts where I don't know, I wouldn't have done it that way. And, really where you're knocking each other's essence, and you're showing lack of dignity, and you're showing lack of listening to the other person, and you're stuck in your ways, and you're fighting in a way that isn't healthy, or that's probably bad. So I think you have to use your own judgment on it. This woman who said that she never saw her parents fight. Frankly, I think that's admirable of the parents. And it could be that her mom just needed to pull her aside and say, by the way, sweetie pie, Daddy and I have a lot of conversations to resolve our issues, but we have them in private. She doesn't need to say any more than that. She doesn't need to say what they're about and whatever. But that might have been an idea for her mother to ameliorate that situation. That now she thinks that she and her husband are doomed. I think a person has to very carefully have conflicts in front of children. I think it does much more harm than good. So if you have to err in one direction or the other, I would err in the direction of not having conflicts and having her daughter have that problem than the other way around, which is way too much conflict for a child to understand. And you have to understand, parents are just discussing, no, we should buy this car because that car is the stupid, has get bad gas mileage or whatever. A kid hears that, are my parents going to get divorced? What's going to be? It's terrifying for a child. So I think if you have to err in one way, the way her parents did it would be my vote, unless it's done in a constructive very, very constructive way. And if you know that you and your husband don't have good track record of handling your conflicts well, definitely take him in private. If on the other hand, you have very serious issues and you know how to communicate it, he shares his and you listen to him, and you share yours and he listens to your side, and and it's a really good thing, then maybe that would be worth every once in a while for the kid to hear. Okay. Excellent question.
So it's actually interesting because I had a friend that a mentor of mine that said something really profound once when I was at her house, and her husband said something and she didn't agree with what her husband said and she had a different opinion, and it was in front of the kids, and he said something and then she said something, and then she turned around and she said out loud, very vocal so her kids heard, she said, "Mommy and Abba don't agree right now, but in our house, we do what Abba says and we follow Abba." And so it was such an eye-opening thing to me. And I don't know if necessarily if it was right or wrong, but it was like this concept of it's okay for mommy to have a different opinion, but she still defers to her husband to say, in this house, it's Abba who end of day, regardless of what my opinion is, it's Abba that we follow, and that's going to be the right choice. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are, because I found it interesting, but
yeah, no, it's very interesting, and I'm amazed at that the woman. I'm pretty impressed. I do question whether all of the things she was saying against what he was saying were helpful for the kid to hear or not. It depends on what it was. If they were talking about, really, really important issues that, or whether it was just a politics throwaway conversation, or whether it was, something about whether, lima beans are tastier than wax beans.
No, it wasn't like it wasn't an intense conversation, but it was more like what I gained out of it, which was so eye-opening to me, was that it's okay for us to have differing opinions, and different opinions are okay, but I still respect you, and therefore your opinion is the ruling opinion. Like, I don't have to be mute.
There's something beautiful about it. I would have had to hear in context. And my approval isn't necessarily, the ultimate whatever.
I like your approval. Your approval is
but I'm just saying. I'm just so sweet. But I'm just saying that whatever was going. You said he gave her, and they're back and forth on their opinions of that were opposite. I would have to sort of hear it to see whether my opinion was whether it was had a positive or a negative effect. And I think that's true of anything. So the take home message for everybody watching is that this is something to consider when your husband is saying something and you don't agree. Consider whether you should talk to him later about it, whether you should say anything, whether you should just, it's so unimportant. Let's just let him say, and I'm not even going to say, I'm not going to open my mouth. It's not even worth it. It's not even, or I feel really strongly about this. I think he's teaching them the wrong thing. Later, that's always better later. Later, I'm going to talk to him, and then maybe tomorrow when we're sitting at the table, I'll have him say, yesterday when we were talking about the fact that, you shouldn't stand for older people. I think mommy brought up to me that maybe you should stand for older people. So I think we should do what mommy says, whatever, however it comes back, but that should be in a later thing. Very, very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. So, a blended family question. I have a blended family. This is from Eva. And my husband doesn't always get along with my older kids. He doesn't want to discipline them because he says it's not his job. He wants me to do it, but then they give me attitude and end up being angry with me. Is it wrong for me to ask my husband to discipline his stepkids if they cross the line with him?
That's a very good question. And you need to find somebody you can turn to for all these questions, because this ain't simple. Okay. It's not simple. And you need to have a woman who's been through it before, or a Rebbitzin who understands you and understands the situation, that you can ask all the minutiae, the little questions to get this sorted out. Don't play this by hip. Don't, shooting from the hip. Don't play it by, guessing and second guessing. You need to be able to have definitive answers for this. And there are people who've been down this road before and can give you the best advice. And there's sources for this. That being said, there is a loyalty issue, and if your husband is disciplining them, it can shake up the balance of their relationship with your husband. It can, and it depends on what ages they are. They're younger kids, which, would be more appropriate for discipline. If they're teenagers and they've been through a lot, they've been through a divorce and they've been through drama and trauma and their own questioning about the purpose of life and where is God and why did God do this? They've been through a lot. Premature, perhaps maturing. Actually, it's not premature. Nothing's premature because God designed it exactly as it was meant to be. However, they have a lot on their plate, and that relationship between the second husband, the stepfather, and the children has to be handled with very, very carefully and with a lot of sechel, a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and you need to turn to people for those questions. Not just once, but just an ongoing. Find yourself a mentor who can walk you through some of the things. You want to do it right. You want to give these kids the best chance they possibly can, both to be close to you and to be close to your second husband, because that relationship might see them through to the rest of their life. That, please God, he'll be part of their lives and part of their weddings and part of their, child rearing, all of the issues that are going to go from here on out. And you want that relationship to be as close as possible. And if they're going to resent him stepping in and disciplining them, you might be doing the exact wrong request of your new husband. So you need to get a lot of good advice on it. Very good question.
Yeah, and actually Maya piped in on this one, which is really nice. She said, and it's so refreshing to hear. She said, my ex-husband and I co-parent our children with so much respect that even though I don't agree with everything he says, I always let the kids know that we follow what your dad says. It also takes the pressure off of me and he feels respected, LOL.
That's fantastic.
Right, like goosebumps, right? Wow. Because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's like dealing with an ex-husband and she does that. Imagine, she's like showing them that. And I think that's a win-win always. When you put the other person, when you show respect to the other person, you never look like the nebuch. You always look like you're, on a higher level. So it's like amazing. Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. People are like there's a lot of what's it called?
A lot of questions. Okay.
No, well, we're going to we always do our question show because we have so many and it's hard to get we'll to what's it called? Fine. Okay. So Baia says, and I think this might be our last question. It's packed with little kids around. I find it very difficult to look put together on a daily basis. I feel very guilty about it, but I don't know how to realistically make a change. My clothes are constantly getting dirty. I'm always on the floor, so I need comfortable clothes, and I don't have the energy in the morning to put on makeup. My husband has never complained. Am I in the wrong here? Is the guilt unnecessary, or is it coming from a good place? And I really should put more effort into my physical appearance.
It's a great question. I can't tell you. I've been to a lot of shirim where they're up there and saying, you need to look a certain way. And when your husband comes home, you need to put makeup on and put your sheitel on or whatever. And these are very important people saying this. So I have to believe there's some reality to it. And in our Gashmi world with with all the billboards and and so much focus on the goof, on the body and how it looks and, whatever. Husbands bombarded with this 24/7. So maybe this is really, really an important aspect. For my perspective is that what a husband wants the most is to be adored. And if the wife is giving him the respect and the adoration, it's not like it doesn't matter, but it certainly takes takes a sting out of her, not being the glamour girl that he married. So I would say that, I guess to put together these two aspects is do what you can when you can. So meaning if you woke up, the baby was sick all night, you got no sleep, you're wearing a snood, you just throw on a robe, whatever, and you're on the floor all day because this one was sick and home from school, and you have zero koiches, zero strength to do anything. Plus the washing machine broke and the oven, that day, have zero guilt. Okay. Zero. Next week, it's a Tuesday, and, everyone got off to school. It's like the house is quiet, and you're like, okay, I'm going to, go shopping on Amazon for new tablecloths. And you're like, wait a second. No, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm getting a new outfit, and I'm going to put makeup on for when my husband comes home, because I can do it. So take the opportunities that you can, and maybe that's only once a month, but take the opportunities that you can to look as special as you can, but don't feel any guilt when there are times when you just can't. And then there are times where what gets us is those times they're on the fence where it could go either way. It's like you finally sit down, and the kids are about to come home from school, and you just cleaned everything and you whatever, and then you made the email, and then you talked to your aunt who you hadn't talked to in a month, and you felt guilty because she's alone, and you talked to her, and now you just plop down on the chair, and the kids are about to come home, and then shortly after, your husband's coming home. And you're like, I should really go put some makeup on. I can't. Those are the times when you're on the fence. Just push yourself a little. And maybe it means you're not putting makeup on, because if you put 10 minutes of makeup on, it takes 20 minutes to get the makeup off with the eyeliner and whatever you do. So say, okay, instead of putting makeup on today, I'm just going to change my outfit. I'm going to go out of a robe. I'm going to put on something that actually it fits me nicely and makes me look, whatever. I'm going to put a shade on. No makeup, that takes too long. Do something, when you're on the fence, do a little bit. Okay, that's it. We have time for today. Thank you so much. This is Leah Richheimer.
But just Leah, quick. We need to do the try it at home. I love it. Everyone loves a try it at home.
Sorry. Okay, so try it at home. So here's the homework for this week, the try it at home. One time this week, when you just feel like you have no energy, do something sweet for your husband. Okay, you're like, ugh. Do one sweet thing. One time when you're exhausted, do one sweet thing. And whether that's to just give him a compliment or send him hearts on a text, or whether it's to, go for say, you always are bugging me after dinner, let's go for a walk. Tonight, we're going to go for a walk. Whatever it is, do one thing sweet for your husband. Okay, it's Leah Richheimer. Now I'm signing off. Sorry. It's Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you next time.